Some reminders about making your slide deck and delivering a professional pitch and presentation. The goal of the slide deck is to convince the audience that your pitch is successful, that it is an idea that's worth investing in. So make sure that you are enthusiastic, make sure that you explain all the unique um, selling propositions of your app so that anyone who sees the pitch will be confident that it is going to be a very commercially successful and popular and critically acclaimed product. Slide decks became common in Silicon Valley in the 90s for startups to convince investors to um, join their venture. They would send out the slide decks and people would read them, and then also the slide decks would accompany pitches to venture capitalists. Uh, Here'd be an example. Netflix wanted to explain what the culture of the company would be like, what it would be like to work with the Netflix staff and team. You really want to avoid death by PowerPoint. Have a simple design. Make sure you're telling a compelling story about why your product will succeed, and that you have a call to action at the end. For this pitch, the call to action is that you want a certain ask. You want them to give you that amount of money. So I would say if your pitch should really hit on these 3 points. When we state the problem, what we mean is, what issue will your product solve? You don't want to say that you'll solve every problem in the world. That's complicated, and in the end you'll solve none. Pick one and explain how your idea is going to solve the problem. So here's Airbnb. They're explaining how there is a gap in the market for travelers who are budget conscious. You want to identify the key benefit of your idea, linking it to the problem so that it should be very intuitive to understand how your product is going to solve this issue. And here's Airbnb's second slide, how their platform is going to allow the renters to save money and the landlords to earn extra money. Try to state the market for your product, the potential for success today and going forward. You've done some market research. This is where the market research goes. Here's Facebook talking about how many people might use Facebook back in the early 2000s. And then here is Square showing mobile payments growing over time. Again, in your product, what is the unique selling proposition? We need to understand how the product works. Don't assume. Show us screenshots, a demonstration, whatever you can do to illustrate how this product will stand out. So Snapchat, they wanted to talk about how they were different from other social media platforms because of the time limit. So here they have a slide, deletes their default, and they show how easy you can set the time limit. Here, Foursquare's talking about how their site will improve engagement with local consumers. So you can talk about how things are going to grow. So having some revenue figures, some profit figures. This is just a hypothetical venture, but you can talk about how you're going to grow. You've talked about.
Good morning, everyone. Please disregard that bell. We need to update our bell system for the hybrid model. Thank you.
You would think after March that the school would have adjusted the bells correctly. Anything that's too hard to adjust, that is not something that anyone in the building could easily adjust to turn off, is not an effective piece of technology. So, show how it's going to grow. You've done a survey, that might go here. You've looked at comparable competitors, this might go here. You can guess how you would do based on how the competition has done. So here's TikTok showing all the different ways that people are interacting with the app. Here's YouTube back when they were starting in 2005, explaining how the shares in the video video uploads had and they all of their stats, views, total content online, time spent online, seem to really change around October 12th, 2005. There was something that happened that day where people really adopted the product more widely. So sometimes on a slide deck it'll list the team, uh, 3, 4 team members, their previous accomplishments, previous places where they've worked. And then they might also, to show your investors, you'd show them the competition, your key competitors, and then what's going to make yours different. So here's Uber showing how it is different in its slide deck from a typical taxi service. If you were starting your own business, you would have some detailed financials, and you would try to go up to 3 years of projections, and you try to have a best, normal, and worst case scenario. So here you can see Mint, it's got a purple, a yellow, and a mauve line, and those are the 3 different situations. Uh, because people don't want to take a risk of losing their own money. So it's reassuring to know, okay, if everything doesn't go well, at least we'll still get this amount of money. And then they can say, well, as an investor, I may not get the top purple line, but I'm probably going to get something close to the yellow. And it's a little more realistic, and show what the rate of return is on their money. So how can you deliver a great pitch? Well, you could record your presentation on a phone and listen. You could perform it on a Meet and ask a friend or a teacher for feedback. The rehearsal really makes things go smoothly. A common error is having your phone up in front of your face or your notes up in front of your face, but if you've rehearsed, you won't need to refer to the script as much. And please don't put your phone in your face. Make sure that you, oh, sorry, so the slide's a little out of order. Make sure you conclude your pitch by asking how much you want from the investors. So you're going to figure out exactly how much you want for your venture, and any extra terms. The reason it's recommended that you give a range is they might say no to an exact number. It shows that you're open to negotiation. I know when the people go on the Dragon's Den, they have a hard figure, but in real life, you would probably get a range of what you were hoping for, because one company might only want to do 50% of what you asked, and that's still okay. You could go to another VC and make up the same total amount. So when you're preparing, I know this looks a little old-fashioned. You can do this virtually as well, but having 3x5 cards with your key pieces of information on it, and laying it out in order helps you visualize how the presentation is going to go. Sometimes I see students, they just pick the template right away and just start typing. Well, no, before you pick the template, pick the content. We can tell as teachers who took the time to put their ideas in order and who just rushed through it. And again, there should be a good introduction. Grab our attention with some enthusiasm or something interesting, and don't trail off. End on a high note with an organized conclusion. Try to tell a story. You can say no to a number, but not to a story. Even like a political polling situation, People can tune out political polling numbers, but the story of a controversial candidate like Donald Trump is really hard to ignore. A company that's an underdog, again, is a very compelling story. So try to make it like a story, and you'll build that emotional connection, and people will want to follow along with you. It's like tell the story of the user who is helped by your app. Tell the story of the app that is going to be launched and make a big difference on the market. And end with something positive. End on a high note so that people have a very positive impression of you. Try to remove barriers between you and the audience. Open up. Don't read the slides. Face the audience. You can look every now and then at the slide, but you should be facing the crowd, and make eye contact. That'll build connections. It'll feel like you're talking to them, and check in with individual audience members around the classroom, and again, they'll feel personally involved. Here's a little bit of a diagram, and unfortunately I've seen the don'ts in the high school classroom too much, slumping with your shoulders forward. It looks kind of, you don't look as confident. Having that phone up right in your face, again, it's a barrier. Touching the podium, it's a barrier. Hands in the pocket or hands in the hoodie pocket. Instead you can see look how the open body position, the feet are, you know, uh, 8 inches, apart. Their toes face outwards a little bit. Hands, naturally straight up. Pick a point on the wall. Push your chest out a little bit. Look at that point straight ahead on the wall. Smile a little bit, and you'll present the image of someone who's trustworthy, who's confident, who's prepared, compared to someone who's shrinking and putting a barrier or looking down. You got to look people in the eye in business. That's a big important part of this presentation, and one of the most common comments I write down for grade 11 and 10 presentations. Again, try not to read. Your phone is just too small. You will be squinting. It'll slow you down. It's just a lack of care if you don't print it out, right? You can print it out, and you can print it in as the biggest size that you want and lay it on the table, and then you can look down at it every now and then. People won't even notice that you've looked down to check. And if you have it in a large point form font, you can have like a list of key bullet points you want to check, and you can go through those. It'll be much more natural than if you try to read the whole script, and it'll really get a much better mark. Don't read the slides. We've read the slide as soon as it's been posted, and repeating it just slows things down and gives the impression that you're trying to fill time and stall instead of trying to convince the audience. Keep it simple, and not too much text on each slide. A visual aid that can show the audience like that. If you have something stunning from your market research, include that. We've asked that you create your icon and your startup screen and your wireframing, so show us some of the main screens and how they're going to work. Focus on what's important. You can't tell us everything. You have to choose what's most important and what you want the audience to remember. This little Steve Jobs quote, simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean, to make it simple, but it's worth it in the end, because once you get there you can move mountains. And if you think of Apple products, they're not too complicated. They look very sleek. The interface is very basic, but people love that ease of use. They really connect with the design, with the packaging, and it's not cluttered, so it feels uh, it feels stress-free to use. It feels like it feels welcoming. It doesn't put up any barriers in the way. So if you can take the time to simplify your idea in the one or two, core ways that your app will make a difference, then your presentation will stand out. Yeah, again, reminder to rehearse your presentation, and then afterwards, after the presentation, think about what went well. Write down, hey, we did a good job of making eye contact, or what, we lost our place because we didn't remember all the information, or unfortunately we read the slides too much and people got bored and stopped listening to us, and that'll help you keep improving each time there's a presentation.